There is a particular kind of grief that belongs to strangers. It arrives without warning, lands in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, and leaves behind a silence that is hard to explain to anyone who didn't watch the same screen, follow the same story, or root for the same character. In the first months of 2026, that grief arrived not once but several times, crossing the borders of Turkey and settling into the hearts of millions of viewers around the world. One by one, in the span of just a few weeks, Turkish television lost some of its own. Actors whose faces had become familiar, whose voices had narrated epic tales of empire and survival, and who, without any warning, were gone. This is the story of those losses. Not a celebration of tragedy, but a remembrance of lives that were genuinely full, of craft, dedication, and a love for storytelling that reached far beyond their homeland.
Kambolat Görkem Arslan.
November 4th, 1980. February 11th, 2026. Before he was a warrior on screen, he was a student in an old conservatory. He grew up in Duz, a city in northwestern Turkey that sits at the foot of mountains and carries the scars of earthquakes. It's the kind of place that teaches you early that the ground beneath your feet is not always solid, that things can shift without warning. Perhaps that sensibility found its way into his acting, into a stillness he carried in front of the camera, a kind of quiet weight that made audiences lean in. He studied at the Hacettepe University State Conservatory in Ankara, one of the most prestigious theater schools in Turkey, graduating from the theater department at a time when Turkish drama was beginning its long climb toward global relevance. According to reports on his career, he began performing on stage professionally in the late 1990s, long before the era of streaming services and international audiences. Those early theater years shaped him. They gave him the discipline that later audiences would sense in his performances, a precision, an economy of expression, a refusal to overreach. His early screen appearances placed him in roles that required presence rather than spectacle. He appeared in the series Semberimd Gül Oya in 2004, which according to Turkish media helped introduce him to wider audiences. Over the following decade, he moved steadily between productions. Love is in the Air, Poyraz Karayel, Hayat Bazin Tatlıdır, building a body of work that, while perhaps not household name famous, established him as someone the industry trusted. Directors cast him in roles that mattered. He showed up. He delivered. But what turned Kambolat Görkem Arslan into a figure recognized not just across Turkey, but across the Arabic-speaking world, the Balkans, and the global diaspora of Turkish drama fans was a role that came to him when he was nearly 40 years old.
The role of Savcı Bey in Kuruluş, Osman.
Kuruluş, Osman is one of Turkish television's most ambitious undertakings, an epic historical drama depicting the founding of the Ottoman Empire, continuing the legacy of Darius, Ertugrul. It is the kind of production that requires actors to inhabit history, to make audiences believe, week after week, that the weight of centuries rests on their shoulders. Kambolat Görkem Arslan joined the series in its second season, in 2020, and his portrayal of Savcı Bey, a figure of authority, loyalty, and moral complexity, immediately resonated. According to fans who followed the series closely, what made his performance memorable was not grandeur, but subtlety. He played a man who knew the cost of power, who carried his convictions quietly and without performance. For many viewers, Savcı Bey became one of the most compelling presences in the series precisely because of him. He was not finished. In the years that followed, he moved through a series of historical productions, Destan, where he played Sultan Beg in an epic set in the ancient Turkic era, Alparslan, The Great Seljuks, where he portrayed Kurtulmuş in 2023, and Yabani, which aired into 2025. He was also known to be part of the cast of Kudu's Fatihi Selahaddin Ayyubi, a production focused on Saladin and the Siege of Jerusalem, which was among the last projects connected to his name. On the night of February 11, 2026, Kambolat Görkem Arslan fell ill suddenly at his home in the Beyoğlu district of Istanbul. His wife called emergency services. He was rushed to Taksim Training and Research Hospital. Despite the efforts of medical staff, he could not be revived. He had suffered a cardiac arrest. He was 45 years old. His manager, Selin Koch, confirmed the cause of death via social media. The response from the Turkish entertainment industry was immediate and sincere. Condolences arrived from co-stars, directors, colleagues, and from the vast international community of viewers who had followed his work. Fans who had watched him bring Ottoman history to life more, not just an actor but a presence, something irreplaceable in the storytelling fabric of Turkish drama. According to multiple Turkish news outlets, the shock of his passing was deepened by how sudden it was. Nothing in the days before had suggested anything was wrong. He had been working. He had been present. He left behind his wife, Hikrin. He left behind a filmography spanning nearly 2 decades. And he left behind those performances, the still gaze of Safsi Bey, the earned dignity of Saltuk Beg, that continue to be watched on screens across every continent.
İbrahim Yıldız.
May 26, 1998. February 27, 2026. Some losses are made heavier not by their size, but by their timing. İbrahim Yıldız was 27 years old when he died. He had only just begun. He was born in Istanbul in 1998, a child of the city, and according to reports about his life, he found his way to acting through education rather than chance. He attended a fine arts high school where he studied theater, developing an interest in performance that he carried alongside a degree in interior architecture at university. That combination, the artistic and the structural, the emotional and the precise, seems, looking back, entirely fitting for someone who would go on to build characters from the inside out. His professional career began in 2015 with a role in Matiz'in Musial, Kozum, the continuation of the enormously popular Magnificent Century saga. He was 17 years old. To appear in one of Turkish television's most celebrated historical franchises at that age, even in a supporting capacity, speaks to a talent that was recognized early. He continued working steadily, appearing in Tek Yürek, Bir Zamanlar Kibris, Tumala, and other productions through the late 2010s and early 2020s. But it was Duay Beni, translated roughly as Hear Me or Listen to Me, that gave him a character audiences connected to most deeply. The series, which aired in 2022, told stories of youth, longing, identity, and the particular turbulence of growing up in a world that doesn't always make room for the young. İbrahim Yıldız played Dogan, and according to reports and fan responses, his portrayal resonated with a generation of viewers who recognized themselves in the character, who felt, watching him, that someone on screen was speaking directly to them. That quality, the ability to make a viewer feel seen, is among the rarest things an actor can offer. What happened to İbrahim Yıldız in the summer of 2025 was the kind of event that defies any reasonable expectation of what life might take. On August 15, 2025, he was in Istanbul's Kartal district when strong winds brought a tree down on him. The accident left him with severe injuries. He was taken to hospital and placed in intensive care. For 6 months, he underwent multiple operations. His colleague Kaner Topçu, according to reports at the time, kept fans updated on his condition. People hoped. The industry hoped. His fans, many of them young, many of them who had grown up watching him, held vigil in the way that people do now, through screens and comment sections and shared prayers across languages and time zones. On February 27, 2026, İbrahim Yıldız passed away. He was 27 years old. Kaner Topçu announced the news on social media. The words, according to reports translated across multiple outlets, were simple and devastated, that a friend and colleague had been lost, and that the grief was immense. The response from Turkey and beyond was immediate. Viewers who had watched him in Duay Beni, in Magnificent Century, in Bir Zamanlar Kibris, viewers in Turkey, in Latin America, in the Middle East, in Europe, shared their sorrow online. The hashtags in his name trended. The tributes were genuine and numerous. What made this loss particularly difficult to absorb was the shape of the life that was cut short. Not a career at its twilight, not a life already fully lived, but a talent barely entering its prime. According to accounts of his work, İbrahim Yıldız had a naturalistic quality on screen, an ease, a groundedness, that is genuinely difficult to teach. He had it at 17, and it only seemed to deepen with time. What he might have done with another decade, another 3 decades, belongs now to the realm of imagination. He was, according to those who worked with him, warm and committed. The kind of person a set feels different without. Ali Tuttle. June 17, 1950. February 22, 2026. Every era of Turkish cinema has its pillars, the actors whose careers span decades, who appear in films that become reference points, who hold the history of a national art form in their bodies and voices. Ali Tuttle was one of those pillars. He was born in Diyarbakir in June 1950, a city in southeastern Turkey with one of the oldest histories in the world, a place where stone streets and ancient walls exist alongside modern life. He came of age as Turkish cinema was finding its footing as a serious art form, navigating between commercial entertainment and social realism. It was a time of change, political, cultural, cinematic, and Tuttle entered the industry at a moment when that change was accelerating. According to reports on his career, he began in advertising before transitioning to cinema in 1976, making his debut in the film Permission. That first role placed him within a Turkish film culture that was increasingly interested in stories of ordinary people, of labor, displacement, family, and survival. Over the decades that followed, he appeared in more than 50 feature films and television series. His credits include On Fertile Lands from 1980, Hemso in 2000, and Homecoming in 2006, productions that, across different periods, engaged with the social and cultural realities of Turkey. His was not always the most visible name on a poster. But within the industry, and among the audiences who followed Turkish cinema seriously, Ali Tuttle represented something essential, the kind of actor who makes other actors better, who brings authenticity to a scene, who carries the weight of a story without appearing to strain under it. A career of over 50 feature films is not built on luck. It is built on professionalism, on reliability, on the craft that shows up day after day, year after year, regardless of whether the cameras are pointed directly at you. In January 2026, he suffered an intracerebral hemorrhage and was hospitalized. On February 22, 2026, he passed away at the hospital where he had been receiving treatment. He was 75 years old. His death was mourned by the Turkish film and television industry as the passing of a genuine veteran, a man whose career had bridged eras, whose presence had graced some of the more significant productions in Turkish screen history. The tributes noted not just the length of his career, but the quiet consistency of it, the decades of showing up with his craft intact. Ramazan Tedic. April 2, 2026. There is something especially difficult about a loss that arrives while treatment is still ongoing, where hope and grief exist in the same space for weeks, and where the end, when it comes, is both dreaded and not entirely unexpected. That was the nature of the passing of Ramazan Tedic. He was known to viewers for his role in Esref Rüya, a series starring Çağatay Ulusoy and Demet Özdemir, two of the biggest names in contemporary Turkish television. His involvement in a production of that scale speaks to his standing within the industry, to the fact that those who make casting decisions recognized in him something worth putting on screen alongside some of the genre's most prominent stars. According to statements shared after his death, Tedic had been receiving treatment in hospital for some time before he passed away. Reports indicated that he had undergone a lengthy and complex operation, with a call for blood donations shared publicly during the period of his treatment, a detail that speaks to both the severity of his condition and to the community that surrounded him, trying to help. His funeral was held on April 2, 2026, at Yıldız Mosque in Istanbul, followed by burial at Eski Sekmeköy Cemetery. He was in his 30s at the time of his death, with some reports placing him at 31, others at 37. Regardless, a young man. Someone at what should have been the beginning of a long career in a television industry that had, in the years of his working life, grown into one of the most globally consumed in the world. The Turkish Actors Union released a statement noting the pain of losing a colleague at such a young age and offering condolences to his family. By any measure, what happened in the first months of 2026 in Turkish entertainment was extraordinary in the worst possible sense. Within weeks, the industry lost actors of different generations, different profiles, different stages of their careers. From a 75-year-old veteran who had given half a century to cinema, to a 27-year-old whose potential was just beginning to take shape. What these losses share is not a dramatic narrative arc but something simpler and more human, the work they left behind, the series that continue to stream, the characters that remain alive in the memories of viewers. The moments, a particular look, a delivered line, a physical presence in a historical scene, that exist now as recordings of people who are no longer here. Turkish drama over the past 2 decades has done something remarkable. It has crossed borders that geography and language would seem to make impassable. In countries across the Arab world, Latin America, the Balkans, Central Asia, and beyond, millions of people have sat down with Turkish series and found in them something that felt universal. Stories of loyalty and betrayal, family and ambition, love and consequence. The actors who inhabited those stories became, in a real sense, shared cultural figures. Their faces were known in Cairo and in Buenos Aires, in Amman and in Jakarta. When those faces are gone, the grief is therefore genuinely wide. It is not the grief of a niche audience mourning a local figure. It is the grief of a global community that has, through years of watching, developed something real, an attachment that doesn't require having met someone to feel the weight of their absence. What comes after grief, if we're lucky, is remembrance. And remembrance, in the case of actors, is built into the medium itself. The performances remain. Cambalat Gorkum Arslan walks again as Safsi Bey across 100,000 screens. Ibrahim Yildiz speaks his lines in Due Beni to a teenager somewhere who has just discovered the show. Ali Tudal appears in a scene from a film made decades ago, precise and present. Ramazan Tedic is there, in the episodes he made with his colleagues, before anyone knew that time would run short. That is the strange mercy of recorded performance. It does not return what was lost, but it keeps something of what was given, and that, for those who watch and remember, is no